Good. Welcome everyone to this talent talk. Um, it's a monthly workshop series held via webinar brought to you by Talent Solutions by WorkSource Spokane. Today we're going to hear from Tony Parks of WorkSource. He's a program manager here. We're going to talk about the opioid epidemic and workplace awareness. Bio for Tony. He was born and raised here in Spokane area. He's got a master's degree in clinical mental health and an eye care certified addiction awareness facilitator for us here. He's got 5 years in the workforce development arena and works here at WorkSource Spokane. So we welcome Tony, our presenter here. My name is Paul Muir. I'm a consultant here with the Talent Solutions team. We're a business services team. We provide no-cost services to assist employers with hiring and retention. Couple housekeeping items. Even though the slide there says that we're going to hold the questions till the very end, Tony's going to take questions during. So if you want to raise your hand and we can call on you for a question, or you can type it in the chat and we'll take that question live, or you can wait till the end with the Q&A section. That'd be fine too. This webinar is being recorded. Everyone is muted. After the webinar, we'll be sending out a registration link for the next event and a survey and the recording link for that. So without further ado, I'll turn the time over to Tony Parks for our presentation.
All right. Thank you, Paul. Is everybody hearing me okay? Hopefully.
Yes, we can hear you good.
All right. All right. Fantastic. Well, welcome. I think we're all at this point probably pretty well versed in the fact that there is an opioid epidemic. It exists and it's live and well. But today what we want to focus on is that addiction's effect on the workplace and how to mitigate it as either an employer or a leader within your organization. So that's kind of why we're here. An interesting tidbit that I just learned this morning is that when we sent out the invitation to register for this, we had more people unsubscribe to our email list than ever before. And that was interesting to me because I think it speaks to the discomfort about this topic, maybe both the discomfort and the burnout on this topic, maybe. But that's why today we're not going to take a deep dive into what caused the opioid epidemic, who's to blame, where it's at, all those different things. We're here to focus on its effect in the workplace and creating an awareness that it is still alive and well, and give you kind of hopefully some tips on how you can, like I said before, mitigate its effect on your individual workplace. So Paul already introduced me. I do have, like he said, 5 years in workforce development after finishing grad school. The plan was to move on, go out in the world and be a counselor. But during my time at WorkSource and in this industry, I kind of developed a passion for it and wasn't ready to leave. So when the opportunity to present on this subject came up and they said, we need somebody to go get this certification, I kind of jumped at it because I thought it was a way that I could, for one, use the degree a little bit that I paid so much for, but also a direct opportunity to make an impact in our community. So that's why I jumped at it. And I think when we dive into this, it's really important to start the way you should really any conversation, and that's with the why. Why does this matter? Why is this important? So we're going to start there, and to understand why it's important, we also need to understand a little bit about both addiction and recovery and what the difference is between the two. This is where I'd like to open it up, and whether you're a guest here or a staff member here in attendance, I'd like to ask the question, what do you all think is the difference? If you had to define it, or is there one? Or are they pretty much the same thing? But what do you guys think? What is the difference between addiction and recovery? And for the record, I've been doing presentations virtually for a long time, so I'm perfectly comfortable with long, drawn-out silences. I can wait. I'm just imagining in my brain right now that everyone is feverishly typing away on their keyboard with the response to that question, and I'm just waiting for it to pop up. Also, I'm going to say that it's ridiculously cold in the room that I'm in. So if my nose starts getting red or you start noticing me sniffling, um, it is chilly in here. Um, Recovery is one wants to get well. I like that, Elaine. And by the way, not a lot of right or wrong answers to this question. All right, that's the only response that I'm seeing. If you're still typing, continue to do so. Hit enter. Hopefully, I'll see it when it pops up, and we can address it. But I like that. It's when someone wants to get well, and that is an important step in moving from addiction to recovery. When they're not, addiction is when they're not at a place or ready to get better. Ooh, I like that too. And ultimately, when a person's in active addiction, that's when they're usually, even if they're not using, they're usually not, they stop taking care of themselves physically, mentally, and emotionally. So they're just not taking care of the things they should be taking care of in their life. Now, once in recovery, that's usually when they start to actually take care of themselves and start to lead a more healthy lifestyle, even if they're still battling the addiction. They can be in recovery when they start to actually take care of themselves a little bit more and start to mitigate the negative impact that the addiction has on their life. Society is losing valuable participants. That's a true story. Both, sometimes they're just losing their lives, and sometimes they're losing their livelihood. So I like that you brought that up because it could be both. And we need, for those of you who aren't aware, I'm sure most of you are, we are at a worker shortage in this country. And if we just take and every time we notice someone is battling addiction, whatever, we just fire them and hire new, we're not doing any favors to that worker shortage. And that's kind of why we're here today, is to talk about that specifically. Addiction is continued use despite the presence of negative consequences. Recovery is the process of actively attempting to improve life circumstances. Brad with the gold star. I love that. Thank you. So why is it important to make this distinction? The main reason is, in making this a distinction, we can see addiction is generally easier to spot. They stop taking care of themselves. So we can usually tell, okay, that person is going through something, possibly, an addiction issue, and we can then interact with them and treat them accordingly, assuming that you're the kind of person who wants to treat somebody accordingly based on what they're going through. Now, what's harder is that someone in recovery can be harder to recognize. And in being hard to recognize, that means that we can trigger them without us even being aware of it. And this is why it's best, especially in the workplace, you guys, because this is where people should feel safe, of course. But we should be aware that anyone can be in a recovery battle, and we don't want to be the trigger that sends that person backward. Now, this is the point usually where I feel like a lot of people start thinking to themselves, yeah, but I don't think we really have that here where I work. And that's a typical response, but here's some numbers to consider if that's what you're thinking. About 10% of employed adults are suffering with addiction. Studies show 10% of working adults suffering addiction. Another 10% are in recovery from a substance use problem. So of course, that's a combined 20%. Simple math tells us 1 in 5 employed adults are going through this at some level or another. We have, I don't know, last I saw, 10 or 12 people here. We can guess statistically that at least 2 people in this meeting could be battling addiction or recovery. So if you think, well, it's not affecting my workplace, if you've got more than 5 people, statistics show that somebody is probably battling this. So with that in mind, my next question for you guys is, what do you think are some things in the workplace that could end up being triggering to either an addict or someone in recovery? What do you guys think are some things that could be triggering for that? Oh, Elaine, you mentioned earlier, treat a person that must want to be treated. You can lead them to water, but you can't make them drink. I love that. And we're going to talk about exactly what that looks like. That's a great segue to kind of where we're going. So thank you for that. The job itself and stress can definitely be triggering and send someone backwards, you bet. What else? Mike McBride, happy hour culture. I've got some comments a little bit later to talk about that specifically. Poor work environment, poor leadership in relationships with colleagues, poor communication, all of these things can be triggering. They can be triggering to anybody battling anything, but especially triggering to somebody battling an addiction where that is their choice to deal with things. Interactions with coworkers, peer pressure, which goes along with that happy hour culture, right? And we're gonna come back to that happy hour culture, Mike. And I never thought about it in those terms, happy hour culture, but I kind of love it. Not that I love it, but it speaks a lot to kind of what we're going to get into. But something else that to kind of be aware of, because all of these things can be triggering. It can be something super simple. And I'm going to give you an example here in a minute, but I want to share this. According to the National Safety Council, 75% of employers report that opioid use has impacted their workplace. 75%. Now, only 17% report being well prepared to address the issue. 75% has had it affect the workplace, but only 17% feel prepared to deal with it. You guys, let's start getting prepared. And that's what this is about, right? That's why we're here today. Okay, so the impact, that's our third bullet point here, the impact. What is the impact on the workplace? Addiction creates an increase in work-related illnesses or injuries, creates chronic medical conditions, which, yeah, those significantly affect the workplace. Overprescription in employee health services or health plans, overprescription in workers' comp and medical care. All of these things, you guys, drive prices up. They drive up the prices of everything. So the point is, this affects the bottom line. Since we're talking about the bottom line, turnover. Turnover is huge. I think we're all pretty well versed and aware of the high cost of losing a staff member and having to replace them. And the cost of turnover alone, that could be a whole other presentation. But let's talk about the numbers specifically. Let's get statistical, is the way I like to put it. Some people, the numbers are what help them learn, help them lock information in. So turnover costs. If you turn over an hourly worker, an entry-level hourly worker generally costs a company about $1,500. This is according to CDC.gov website on substance use. Those professional and technical level staff usually cost 1 to 1.5 times their annual salary to replace them. And when we get to the C-suite, it's over twice their annual salary is the cost to replace. Now, where do all those costs come from? All those hidden costs in that? Again, not here to get into that. I'm sure an HR generalist would probably give you, like I said, an entire presentation on that. You can Google it, find all kinds of information about those costs. But again, that's a whole hour-long presentation in and of itself. But these are the numbers. And here's the thing, though, in my opinion, that's not why I'm here. In my opinion, the health and wellness of staff should be a big enough reason to want to address this issue. But if it's not, these are the numbers. This is the cost. If we just say that person is suffering from something, I may not even know what it is, but also don't want to deal with it. We're just going to cut our losses and bring in someone new. This is the cost of doing that. The cost of a quality employee assistance program, which we're going to get into, far less. Actually helping them with the problem costs less. And that's what we're here for, is to hopefully encourage more people to help their staff rather than just let them go. So what is the role of the workplace in all of this? We'll get into the employee offerings to help, but let's start with the workplace itself. The first step is simply recognizing that there is a negative stigma attached to addiction and recovery. And it's a very real stigma. And ideally, if we want people to be able to talk about this and seek help, we need to break that stigma. And in this case, we're only talking about drug use, right? But when we talk about addiction, we can get into gambling, food, social media, which, by the way, the Surgeon General now, the U.S. Surgeon General wants to put warning labels on social media because of its addictive tendencies. But those are a whole other topic. We're here to talk about the negative stigma when it comes to drug addiction, opioids specifically, but it might not just be opioids. They're not the only drug that affect the workplace. I would venture to say alcoholism has a pretty big impact as well. There are a lot of different things that we can get addicted to and allow to have a negative impact on our lives. But if we can more openly talk about them and support each other, then that's where we can be healthier as a whole, as a country, as a community, and yes, as our own individual workplaces. We can tear down that stigma because we've already covered the fact that it affects 1 in 5 adults. We should be able to have this conversation in a positive light. It affects so many people. And actually then encourage that conversation. And speaking of those 1 in 5 adults, when we're talking about opioid-specific addiction, this can happen to anyone. It knows no bounds. It crosses cultural and socioeconomic lines. And speaking of that conversation, it's important to know what kinds of things could be a trigger so that we can avoid them and avoid possibly sending that person backward in their journey. If someone's going to relapse, you guys, I certainly don't want it to be because of something I said or something I did that triggered them. And just being aware of it is a huge step in the right direction. Brett earlier, I'm sorry, Mike mentioned the happy hour culture at work. You guys, a great starting point is encouraging after work activities that don't revolve around drinking. So many of them do, and it just kind of seems to be this default. But it doesn't have to be. You can do other things outside of things that revolve around drinking. And discourage conversations like the around the water cooler conversations about drinking. We should be able to talk about a lot of different things rather than, and here's the thing, you might be someone who can go out on the weekend, have a great time, have however many drinks you want, and still function and not get addicted. But that doesn't mean that the people you're talking to or the people overhearing your conversation are in that same boat. So be aware of that and discourage negative comments about addicts. Working in an office like we do, we work with a lot of people dealing with significant barriers to employment. And sometimes that barrier is addiction. And they're coming in our door, some of them actively using when they come through our door. And sometimes that use creates a scene. And then as we are de-escalating the scene and working with the person and fixing it, then we kind of come back into our own areas and decompress after something like that. That's when you hear words like crackhead. I'm just going to throw it out there. And here's the thing. If somebody you work with is battling with their own issue, and then they hear you saying things like crackhead, do you think they're going to, then they're going to come to you if they have a problem? Or are they going to feel silently judged themselves? Again, these are just awareness things to get out there. And so you can, to illustrate how simple it can be. So have regular meetings about your employee assistance programs, by the way. And again, we're going to get into what that means. Hopefully that's ringing a bell for a lot of you, the EAP. If it's not, we'll get into that. But what's offered, and drive home the fact that that help is confidential. There's a confidential aspect to pursuing that help and support from an employer. And if you do these things, you start to discourage these possible triggers and start to discourage this negative stigma and this language in the office. I'm sorry. It's just hilarious to me how much this happens. I just got a notification that I'm going to get a forced update on my computer, and it's going to restart at 10:34. My options are to restart now or at 10:34, and that's it. So we will have a short break at 10:34 while my laptop restarts. So my apologies. Hopefully it'll only be about a 5-minute break, but we'll deal with that when the time comes. So let me at least finish this point. Now I got to remember where I was. But if you do all of these things, what it communicates to your staff is value. Communicates that you value them and you're willing to meet them where they're at and help them grow. rather than just cutting them loose and bringing in someone new. And this creates a certain loyalty in the workplace. And I believe that you're going to get a lot more out of somebody who feels that value than someone who doesn't. And by the way, helping someone in the workplace, other staff are going to see that happening, and it's going to help create that loyalty in them too. And then there's the awareness piece. And I got to start with this. As far as being aware, are you aware, if you're an employer, that substance use disorder is a protected disability according to the Americans with Disabilities Act? And if you weren't aware of that, now you are. And again, this can be a really deep rabbit hole to go down, but if this is the first you're hearing of this, I'm going to encourage you to reach out to, if you have an HR specialist in the house, reach out to them, have that conversation. What does this mean? What do we need to do to make sure that we're in compliance with the Americans with Disabilities Act? That can be, like, again, it can be a deep rabbit hole, and that's not what the hole we're here to go down. But I wanted to bring it up as far as that awareness piece. The awareness piece for me came from the training I got to do this in becoming an addiction awareness facilitator. And I went into one of my team meetings that I have a few times a week. And usually what I do is look up all the national days of the week. And when we go in, I'll use one of the national days. By the way, there's a national day for just about everything. I think today is like National Cherries Jubilee Day or something, but it's also about 20 other national days today. And on that day, I went in and I usually use those to create a question just to start our meeting, an icebreaker, if you will. On that day, it happened to be National Pina Colada Day. I was like, oh, that's fun. I'm going to go in and I'm going to ask my staff what their favorite go-to, and it was like a 100-degree day that day too. So I threw in, on a hot day, what's your go-to cocktail? That was going to be my question. And then I thought, am I even listening to the training that I'm receiving? And I had to reassess how I was going to go about that. And I had a plan. I didn't have a whole lot of time to change my plan by the time I realized it. And so what I did is I went into the meeting and said, okay, it's a super hot day. What is your go-to drink, beverage, to quench your thirst on a hot day? And the responses came back. None of them were alcohol related. We talked a lot about iced tea and lemonade, just ice water, different things. But we kept alcohol out of the conversation. And here's the thing, on my team, statistically, there's at least one person struggling with addiction or recovery. And I certainly didn't want to walk into that meeting, ask a question. And here's how easy it can happen. You guys ask a question that gets them thinking. National Pina Colada Day, that sounds good. I might just go out for, take a long lunch and go have a little lunch, drink on my lunch break. Won't be that bad. Just one. And then one leads to two leads to three. Then that person is calling out for the rest of the day. They're waking up tomorrow not feeling great, maybe calling out the next day. And maybe we just sent them, maybe they were in recovery and we just sent them back to full-blown addiction. And I'm just telling you, that's how easy it can happen. So the awareness piece is so huge because we can reframe some of the things we normally do. If you normally did, like Mike mentioned, a happy hour after work, maybe make it a game night at a local bowling alley or something of that nature. All right. All right, I just got to know, I'll come in, I'll probably finish at some point when my computer shuts down, I'll join the other in another room and finish in there. But anyway, we'll continue on as long as it lets me. So that's the workplace role in all of this. The stigmas, the triggers, the awareness piece. But now we got to get into what is it that we're looking for? What are those signs and symptoms so that we know when somebody needs our help? Because I already mentioned addiction can affect a lot of things in the workplace, including, I didn't touch on safety, touched on healthcare costs, overall productivity, absenteeism, job performance, all those things. And if employers or supervisors, leaders, whatever you want to call them, can identify the early signs and symptoms of addiction or substance dependence, then they can help connect employees to treatment and those recovery supports without the threat of losing their job. That part is huge, making them feel safe in this. So what is it we're looking for? What do you guys think? What are some things that a leader in a business should be looking for to identify if somebody might need help? Oh, I just saw Lane's comment. A trigger could be you just saying good morning. You can't know a person's trigger. So that's exactly right. That's why the awareness piece is so important. We're never going to be perfect. And here's the thing, if you know you mess up, you said something, you're like, oh shoot, I shouldn't have said that at work. It's okay. Just learn from that moment and commit yourself to doing better. I know before I received all the training that I received, I went into meetings and said things that could have triggered somebody. I know that tomorrow or today, I could say something that could trigger somebody, but being aware of it and then realizing, oh shoot, I just said that out loud, and now I'm sitting here going, I hope that didn't negatively affect somebody. Just being aware can really help change our messaging. I see that Brad is typing away. Anybody else? Any ideas on what we're looking for? Increased absences, isolation from coworkers, definitely. I guess the person could just be an introvert and could always isolate. But at the end of the day, it's sudden change. And you might say sudden change in what? Well, kind of pretty much anything. But especially change in performance, change in productivity, like Brad mentioned, change in absenteeism, physical appearance, change in speech, personality, mood swing. These could all be signs. By the way, these are all also signs to look for of divorce or a death in the family or receiving a chronic diagnosis. So, point is, all those things, it's still really a great idea to connect them to your employee assistance program. So, you start to notice these things. We want to connect them to the employee assistance program. What do you do? So, I'm going to pose that question. If in the workplace, you or somebody's supervisor, and you start to notice these differences in them, and you have certain suspicions, what are you going to do? You have a notion, you have an idea that they might be going through something. What are you going to do? I just noticed that I'm up on 2 screens. I don't even know how that's possible. Done a lot of virtual presentations. I've never seen myself on 2 screens.
Yeah, Tony, I see that it's together mode. Not exactly sure. Well, anyway, but keep going. I think everybody can just see the one screen of you and me.
Okay. Okay, I'm not seeing anybody comment on what to do. So I guess what I'll do is I'll just move on. I've got about 5 minutes before my presumed shutdown of my computer. So what would you do? It's going to be the same thing I think you would do in your personal life. If someone in your personal life was going through some things and you started to notice some changes, chances are you're just going to ask them, right? There you go. Yeah, Steve mentioned it. Ask some questions. And it can simply be, how are you? Now, that's a question that loses some meaning sometimes. I understand that. So you have to ask it in a way that you mean it and that they know you meant it when you asked it. So how do you do that? How do you let them know that you really meant it when you asked it? Offer support and resources. I like that in the chat. You're going to want to be sure, how are you doing? And they're going to say, I'm good. How are you? And you say, well, how are things going in your life? Are things in life going okay? And if they continue to say, yep, they're fine. A follow-up could just be, especially if you're in a one-on-one with them, just let them know I've noticed some changes. And I want you to know that we value you and we are here to help. What do we have here? Brad mentioned they don't care what you know until they know that you care. 100%. That's just it. And you guys, if you think just walking by and saying, hey, how you doing, is letting someone know that you care. So when I found out we were going to be doing this type of presentation, we decided, okay, well, I'm gonna put this together. I'm gonna test it out on our staff here. So we had about, I don't know, 40, 50 people in a room, and I got to present this and ask for their advice, their feedback. And one of the ladies in our office shared, she came over here to the States as a refugee, and now she has a job helping other refugees in the same situation. But she mentioned that when she was coming over, she went to basically what she referred to as America School and learned basically how to be an American. One of the things they actually told them, and this was heartbreaking for me, is that in America, when somebody asks how you're doing, they don't really want to know. They're just being polite. And that was really heartbreaking. But that is, and I thought about it, I was like, that kind of is our culture, right? How you doing is just like a greeting, but the meaning tends to wear off. So I bring that up just because it's another thing to be aware of. If you really want someone to open up, you need to have follow-up questions to just, how you doing? And if they say good, fine, you move on. You say, they're good. I asked. Now they know I care. I did my part. It needs a little more, you guys. A little more follow-up. If you really want to communicate that you care. Because like Brad said, they're not going to open up unless they think you genuinely care. So you need to create that trust. And actually that's a great intro to the next slide, which is all about workplace culture. All right. But the what to do part, this is the what to look for part, but the what to do part, that part starts with a trusting workplace culture. Does your staff trust you enough to come to you with personal problems? And you might say, I don't want them to. I don't want to know about their personal problems. But I'm going to challenge that and just say, if you want a loyal workforce for yourself, for your business, that is going to go the extra mile for you, you need to go the extra mile for them. And part of that comes with caring about what's going on in their life. Creating that trust, to me, it should just be worth it as a human being, because we're from one human to another. But if that's not enough, creating a work environment where your staff can ask for help, it just saves money. Plain and simple. We already talked about the high cost of turnover. It just saves money, plain and simple. Now, I'm not here to help your bottom line. That's not why I signed up for this. That's just a byproduct. I'm here because I believe this stuff can really make a difference in someone's life. And if the more awareness we get out about it, the better we can do. All right. I'm going to pause here, I think. And because I think my laptop is getting ready to do its restart, although I haven't received a notification, so I'm convinced to keep going because I think it said 10:34, it's 10:34, and nothing has popped up letting me know. So that being said, I'm going to power through for now, and we'll see what happens. Sorry for the technical part, but that's just kind of ever since, I don't know, I would say since COVID, that's just kind of part of our lives now. We have this technical aspect to all of our meetings. But here we go. Let's talk about that workplace culture. Let's take a dive into that. And we mentioned the asking the questions, right? How are you doing? But then meaning it. Another part of the workplace culture and establishing that workplace culture where people feel safe are trainings just like this one. Have these trainings with your staff.
Okay, everyone. Sorry about that. Looks like Tony's computer has restarted. So hang tight, and we're going to try to move him over here and continue on. Give us one moment. Okay, we were just talking with Tony, and he's going to check on that. Give us another minute here. Our apologies for the technical difficulty.
All right. I shifted location. Now I'm probably showing up as Paul, but that's okay. Oh my gosh, okay, some of the views here look interesting. All right. Everybody hear me okay? Can I get a thumbs up or something?
Share screen. Oh, we got to share screen.
Oh, we're not sharing. Let's do that.
You want to share this first or slideshow mode?
Yeah, but oh, there we go. So is that not up there?
No.
Oh.
What do you yes.
Oh, because it's already there we go. Oh gosh. Okay, we're gonna get there, you guys. Gotta love it when this happens. Go. There we go.
Okay.
We got two of these going.
You're showing there's
Okay.
yeah, you're showing that. You went to the next slide.
Yep,
Yeah.
here we go. Okay. We're back on track. Hopefully everybody's hearing okay. So I was mentioning having these trainings being a very important step. It's a huge step, but it's not the last step. And that part's really important because this should be an ongoing conversation. The way I always encourage it is quarterly, companies should be talking about this kind of awareness and having this conversation. And sometimes I think if you're going to pose it to your staff, posing it as a conversation about something rather than a training can kind of change their approach and how they're going to go into it. So just a thought there. Because and here's the thing, someone might not come forward the first time this subject comes up. We can have a training just like this with your entire staff. And the first time, they might not feel safe yet. But if the conversation continues and you continue to come back to it, like I said, maybe quarterly, that's when you start to develop that trust. And that's when they start to realize you're doing a little bit more than just checking a box. Because the first time they might think, oh, this is just a training to check a box for my employer, and they don't really mean it. But if you continue coming back to it, that's when you can inspire someone to actually take that scary step. So when you ask someone how they're doing, mean it. Great example of this. I had an old boss before I came to WorkSource, and he had a reputation throughout the entire company of speed walking down in a hallway. He'd see you coming. He'd say, how you doing? He didn't pause or even turn around to listen to your response, just kept on going. Now, is that someone you think I would have felt comfortable going to, that I would have trusted going to if I had a personal issue that I thought work might be able to help me out with? I'll spoiler alert, the answer is no, definitely not. So say someone does share with you though. They've shared, I am going through something. I might need some help with this. How do you all let them know that you heard them? How would you let them know that they have been heard? Oh, I got the chat over there. Perfect. There is three of me. I know. What a world we live in, Elaine, where there's three of me. I don't know what to say about that, other than good luck. But how are you going to let someone, they just shared something really impactful with you? How do you let them know you heard them? Like, confirm what you heard. Sometimes it's as simple as just repeating it back to them. So what I'm hearing from you is you're struggling with whatever it might be. Let them know that. I like that as a first step. I see more acknowledge their existence, like your old boss did not do with you. That's exactly right. And if they share them, first of all, I'm going to say thank them for sharing. Let them know how much that means to you that they trusted you enough to share. That's a huge step. And here's the thing, you might find out at a time that's not super convenient. And if that happens and you don't have the time to take that dive with them, Just let them know that. Communicate that. Say, wow, really appreciate you sharing that. I'm headed into this meeting that I really have to get to, but I want to put some time on the calendar for you and I to sit down and really have a one-on-one conversation about this. It's going to help them feel heard. It's going to help them feel valued. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that too, but vulnerability is probably the best way to gain trust. Somebody mentioned, don't turn the conversation into something about yourself. Keep it about them. If I would say, if somebody comes to you and talks about their struggle with addiction, never say, oh, I know exactly how you feel. Because, by the way, none of us knows exactly how any of the rest of us feels. Everybody's battle, even if it's similar, is different. So you can't know exactly how someone feels, but you can let them know that you feel for them. That's a great point. Don't make it about you and about things you've been through. Keep the focus on them and what they're going through. And as a leader, one of the best ways to build trust is by admitting your mistakes. These are the leaders I trust in my life, the ones who admit they're not perfect and they're willing to call themselves out, because that makes others feel safe to do the same. Okay, one of the leaders in my life will randomly just throw out in conversation their number of days sober. I think that's awesome. That's a leader, somebody I massively respect, has been through something and just throws that out. Now, if something came up in my life and I needed to ask for help, especially on the job, that's a person I feel like I could reach out to because they're willing to talk about their own journey. Another great one that I'm going to share that's a smaller scale. So that one's very big scale, very direct. Sometimes these things can be built on a very small scale. We have a leader in this office who there's a policy. If you're going to be out of office, you update this certain calendar, then everybody gets a notification. Everybody knows who's in and out of the office. Very small thing. We had a leader who wasn't going to be in that day, forgot to update that calendar. On her day off, she sent out an email calling herself out, said, look, I expect all of you to do this. I failed to do it, and I apologize. This is where trust is built. This is where loyalty is built, and this is where people buy into a company. And if you don't think employee buy-in is valuable to whatever it is your company is doing, then you probably need some significant leadership training. I'm just going to throw that out there. All right. Questions so far? We're going to get into the what we can do part next, but I just want to open it up. Any questions so far? I know I said earlier, throw them out at any time, but sometimes you need a specific invitation. And then we're going to open it up at the end for questions too. And we're getting close to the end, I promise. Okay, I'm not seeing anything pop up. We're going to move on. If you are formulating that question in your head, throw it out there at any time, and we'll address it. So what can we do? I'm going to talk about the employee and the employer perspective. From the employee perspective, you guys, it's simple. Support each other, just like you would in life, just like you would with your family. And by the way, we spend about as much time with our coworkers as we do with our family. So we sure as heck should be supporting each other, but support each other without judgment. Understand that we all have a battle that we're going through of some kind, and somebody's might be different than yours, but it doesn't mean it's worse than yours. And that's how you reverse that stigma too, by the way. You start using inclusive language and avoiding those triggering subjects, avoiding that triggering word choice, just like my pina colada example, where I went from talking about pina coladas, let's just talk about hot day beverages. Hopefully that changed some things, might have saved me from triggering somebody. Again, I'm not going to be perfect. Being aware is how we get better. Now the employer part is a little more in depth, because that's where, yes, we have to develop that trusting culture. And then once we get the trust built, then we need to offer help. What does that help look like? I've mentioned the employee assistance program. And at the end of this presentation, we have a whole list of resources that our talent solutions team is going to share with you guys on things you can add and build into your employee assistance program. Also, if you don't have an employee assistance program, your first step, create one. That's going to be huge. And if you don't already have it, another thing, a drug policy. A written drug policy in the workplace also helps build that trust. Add it to your employee handbook. Now, how does that help build trust? Because known expectations build trust. Unknown expectations, there's a lot of curiosity, a lot of gray area. You want it to be pretty black and white so people know exactly where they stand. And another resource we're gonna provide, the Department of Labor came out with what they call a recovery ready workplace toolkit. And I'm just gonna read to you guys from their website what the purpose of this toolkit is, because I think it sums it up real nice. The purpose of the Recovery Ready Workplace Toolkit is designed to help businesses and other employers prevent and respond more effectively to substance misuse among employees, build their workforces through hiring of people in recovery, and develop a recovery supportive workplace culture. That's what that toolkit is based around, and that's something that we're going to provide at the end of this presentation, along with a lot of others. But I've mentioned it a lot, so here we go. Let's dive into Employee Assistance Program. There is a lot of different definitions you can come up with for this, and I kind of took and combined a lot of them into one. But ultimately, it's just like a group of resources to help employees with personal or professional issues. And again, yes, addiction is one of those. A death in the family. If you know of a death in someone's family, you should ask them to reach out. If you have those things in your employee assistance program, one of them is help with lawyers' fees, help with writing a living will. There's all kinds of things that can be in an employee assistance program. Does anybody have any ideas what's in theirs? Some things that are in your existing employee assistance program? Probably not. I know for the organization I work for, the list is ridiculous. If you're moving to a new area and you're looking for childcare in that area, what's available? The employee assistance program has that in there. You can call a number, let them know your situation, let them know where you live, and there's somebody who will actually then send you a list of all the people near you, their address, and are they currently accepting new children into it. That's just one example of a lot of different things you can offer in an employee assistance program. Anything else there? I'm going to be honest, I lost some of my notes on this slide and moving from one room to another, but that's okay because I think we're on track. Okay, I'm not seeing anything in the chat. If you're looking to beef up oh my gosh, one of the big things I almost forgot to mention, when you're trying to, I'm gonna use the word sell your employee assistance program. You're trying to let somebody know it's there. We have these things available to help you. A great piece to mention, it's confidential. Be sure and drive that point home. They won't be judged for reaching out and asking for these services. No one will even know. Whether they get the info from their HR, whether they get it from their supervisor, whether they get it from the online employee website, it's all confidential. Elaine said, I have used EAP. I did not find it that helpful. I am going to encourage you, Elaine, to reach out to whoever your supervisor is. Let them know, well, if you feel comfortable. If not, reach out to HR. Let them know you tried to use it, what you were trying to find, and that you didn't find it helpful. Because here's the thing. There's things they might be able to add that would make it more helpful, but they don't know unless they hear back from the employees that this is what I'd like to see in the employee assistance program. So I'm going to encourage you to definitely do that, Elaine. Thank you for sharing that. And for people who want to build their employee assistance program, this is what I'm talking about. I know this is small type. That's okay, because you're going to get this sent to you. Either you already have or it's going to be after the presentation. So you have access to all of these resources. Now, these ones are opioid specific. But if you want to find other things, I'm going to say for either reach out to your HR person and ask them to research it, or just Google it. Google, what can I add to my employee assistance program? And you're going to get all kinds of options. And these are generally low cost. It's just kind of like an insurance policy. They're usually low cost things to add, but that can be massively helpful to your employees. And again, communicate that value. And again, get them the help they need so that rather than let them go, you can get them the help they need, build that loyalty, and have a stronger staff because of it. All right, I'm running out of time, but The main thing I want to ask is for those of you who are in attendance, just a yes or a no in the chat. Or you could say maybe. I'll give you a maybe. Do you believe where you work is a recovery-friendly workplace? I'm going to give you yes, no, or maybe. I got a maybe from Elaine. Okay. All right. And a yes. Anybody else? Brad says yes. Sorry, no, I'm looking to the side. That's where the chat screen is. So anyway, hopefully you're looking at the PowerPoint and not me anyway. Okay, so the only two who chose to answer, but we got a yes and a maybe, so not a no. So that's a good thing. We didn't get a no, but I would love to see Elaine. I would love to see everybody answer yes with an exclamation point. So Elaine, it sounds like where you're at maybe has a little bit of work to do, but at least it wasn't a no. And awareness, trainings like this, you guys, this is the first step, but it's certainly not the last. And the workplace culture piece and building the workplace culture, that one is ongoing. That goes forever. There's no end point. There's no, okay, I've developed this fantastic workplace culture. Now I'm done. Because if you stop building it, then you're going to move backwards. It's continuous. You're never going to be done developing your workplace culture. All right. So next steps, though, should be create that drug policy, create an EAP, add to your EAP, and then continuously work on that environment, the workplace culture, so that your staff feel safe asking for help. And this is where I like to say, one of the leaders here on our campus always says, don't let perfect be the enemy of good. Improvement matters. Sometimes it's baby steps. You don't have to be perfect right now, but just think, how can I be a little bit better? And then when you feel good about that, now how can I be a little bit better? Just take those baby steps. And I know I'm a What About Bob fan. I love baby steps. So again, it just comes down to being aware of it. What can we do to help? And the help is the EAP, and then make your staff feel safe asking. Those are the three main steps. Be aware of it, create a program, and create an atmosphere where your staff feels safe. All right, that's what I have. Thank you for trusting me with your time today. I do want to open it up for questions if there are any. In the meantime, do we have, the final slide wasn't on this one, but the final message is if this piqued any interest, but you're not sure what to do from there, that's where our talent solutions team comes in. Okay, that's what they do. They work directly with employers to create those solutions. So if you're not sure what it looks like, reach out to our talent solutions team, let them know you'd like to work on this, and we can create a plan. I would love if this thing grew so that quarterly, I was being asked to go into different places and talk about this and get the awareness out there. That's kind of the overall goal. But right now, we're just getting started. So thanks for having me on a Talent Talk.
Should I slide over here then?
All right. I'm going to turn it over to Paul.
All right. Appreciate Tony being here and working through the technical difficulty as well. We kind of adapted here a little bit, and I'm glad we were able to do that. So again, a big the thank you slide. That's true. So so big thanks to Tony Parks there. I don't have a last slide to share because of our technical difficulty, but let me just read it here. So join us for our next Talent Talk webinar coming up on October 22nd from 10 to 11 a.m. Skillskin will be presenting employing people with disabilities and what you are missing. And so our presenter Steve McBride will be on. So join us for that. We don't have the link for that, right? Yeah, we'll get that link sent out. As far as contacting us, Talent Solutions, give us a call at 509-532-3186 or email us at talentsolutions@esdasindog.wa.gov, and you can connect with us on LinkedIn. So, okay. Again, appreciate everybody being here, especially with our technical difficulty working through that. But good discussion today on opioid epidemic and workplace awareness. So with that, we'll close here. Everybody have a good day.